Most of the accounts I get start with something that doesn't make sense. This one starts with something that makes complete sense. A woman hears her neighbors fighting. That's it. That's where it begins. Her name is Rachel Demi. She's a nurse. She submitted this account in 2 parts, a written version and a voice memo she recorded at 4 a.m. that she said she couldn't finish.
I'm going to read you the written version. The voice memo is 11 minutes long. I've listened to it 3 times. I'm not going to play it for you.
The first time I heard them fighting, I remember thinking, finally. Not because I wanted anyone to suffer, because for 8 months the house next door had been completely silent. 8 months of a couple living 12 feet from my bedroom window and producing 0 noise. No TV, no music, no conversations I could half hear through the wall. Nothing. And I had started, somewhere in the back of my mind, to find that unsettling in a way I couldn't name. I work nights. A trauma ward runs on a specific kind of sound. Monitors, wheels on linoleum, the particular cadence of a room where someone is declining versus a room where someone is stable. I know the difference between a silence that means everything is fine and a silence that means something has already happened. I know it before I can name it. The house next door sounded like the second kind. So the first time I heard the shouting, a man's voice, then a woman's, words I couldn't make out, I actually relaxed. Normal people, I thought. Good. My name is Rachel Demi. I'm 34. I've been a nurse at St. Elizabeth's. For 9 years, I work nights, and I live in a 2-story brick row house in Youngstown on the west side of Mahoning Avenue. The houses on my block were built in the 1930s for steel workers and their families. They're close together in a way that newer construction isn't. My living room wall and the Okafor house living room wall are separated by 14 inches of brick and air. I know that because the previous owner told me when I bought the place. She said it like a warning. I have a 6-year-old daughter named Maya. She stays with my mother on the nights I work. The couple next door, I called them the Okafors because that's the name on the mailbox. I never spoke to them. In 8 months, I'd seen the woman once, briefly, getting into a car in the driveway. The man I'd never seen at all. I want to be clear about that before I tell you the rest. The fighting started in October and followed a pattern almost immediately. Tuesday nights, sometimes Wednesday, always after midnight, always the same shape. A man's voice rising first, then a woman's voice. Lower, like she was trying to keep the argument contained, then silence. Then sometimes the man's voice again, quieter. Then nothing. I'm a nurse. I've worked 9 years in trauma. I know what domestic situations sound like, and I know what they don't sound like. This didn't sound like danger. It sounded like 2 people who had been having the same argument for a long time and had gotten very tired of it. I noted the pattern. I decided I'd knock on the door if it escalated. It didn't escalate. For 6 weeks, it didn't escalate. On the 7th week, the woman stopped responding. I don't mean she left. I mean in the middle of the argument, I could still hear her moving. I could hear what I thought were footsteps upstairs. But her voice went silent. Just the man's voice. Going and going, getting quieter over time, not louder, which is the opposite of what you expect. I told myself she'd stopped engaging. Smart strategy. Let him wind down. I fell asleep before it ended. I started paying closer attention in November. Not because I was worried, because I had a system now. Tuesday nights, I'd keep my phone close in case I needed to call non-emergency dispatch. I was being responsible. That's how I framed it to myself. On November 14th, a Tuesday, the argument started at 12:22 a.m. Man's voice, rising, the usual shape. Then the woman's voice, and for the first time I could make out actual words. She said, clearly enough that I heard it through a 14-inch brick wall, "That's not what this is." Then silence. The man's voice, quieter now, said something I couldn't hear. Then nothing. For 4 minutes, nothing. Then the woman's voice again, very low, too low for words, almost like she was reciting something. I got up and stood next to my bedroom window, which faces the side alley between our houses. The Okafor bedroom window is directly across from mine. 6 feet of space between the glass. Their light was off. The sound was coming from a dark room. I told myself she was on the phone. Low voice, dark room. She'd stepped away from the argument and was calling someone. Made sense. I went back to bed. I didn't call anyone that night. That's the thing I come back to. My daughter had a recital in November. Sunday afternoon, school auditorium, the kind of thing that fills your whole weekend in the best way. I came home at 6 p.m., made dinner, got Maya to bed by 8, fell asleep by 9:30, which almost never happens. I woke up at 2:17 a.m. No sound that I could identify. I just woke up, the way you wake up when something has already stopped. I lay still. Listened. The Okafor house was silent. It was a Wednesday, off pattern. I hadn't been expecting anything. After about 2 minutes, I heard it, not through the wall. From outside, from the alley between the houses, a sound I can only describe as contact. Not a knock, not a scrape. Something making deliberate contact with the exterior brick, moving from the ground floor upward. Slow, even spaced. My bedroom is on the second floor. I did not get up. I want to be honest about that. I lay in my bed and I did not move for 11 minutes by the clock on my nightstand. My hands were completely fine. The rest of me wasn't. The sound stopped when it reached the height of my window. I didn't hear it go back down. In the morning, I checked the alley. The brick on my side of the house was undamaged. The brick on the Okafor side, there were marks. Horizontal marks, evenly spaced, running from the foundation upward. They stopped at the level of my second floor windowsill. I took a photograph. I have it. I told myself, wildlife, raccoons in the alley, common in Youngstown. They climb. It was a rational explanation. I still have the photograph. I knocked on the Okafor door on a Thursday afternoon in late November. I'd been preparing what I was going to say. Something neighborly. "Hey, I'm Rachel from next door. Just wanted to introduce myself. I've been meaning to come by." Normal, non-confrontational. The woman answered the door. She looked fine. She looked completely fine. Normal clothes, hair pulled back, cup of something warm in her hand. She smiled when she saw me. She said, "You must be from next door." I said yes. I introduced myself. She said her name was Adaze. She said her husband was at work. She asked if I wanted to come in. I said no, I was just stopping by. And I don't know why I did this. It wasn't part of what I'd planned to say. I asked, "Is everything okay over here? I've heard some noise at night. I just wanted to make sure." Her expression didn't change. She said, "We're fine. I'm sorry about the noise." Then she said, "It won't happen anymore." I said okay, and I walked back to my house, and I didn't realize until I was inside that she hadn't asked me what kind of noise. A normal person would have said what noise, or sorry, were we being too loud, or was it the TV? She said, It won't happen anymore, like she already knew what I'd heard. She was right. For 3 weeks, nothing. No arguments, no sound, not even footsteps, not even the normal creaks of people moving through a house at night. The Okafor house returned to the silence it had kept before October. I told myself I'd helped. Neighborly intervention, problem solved. I told myself a Daisy's phrasing had been fine. She was probably just embarrassed. Who wouldn't be? My daughter Maya went back to my mother's on December 12th. I worked 4 nights in a row, came home, slept through the mornings, kept my routines. On December 16th, a Sunday night, I came home from work at 7:15 a.m., made coffee, sat down at my kitchen table. The Okafor house was making sound, not an argument, not voices at all. Movement. Slow, deliberate movement across what I estimated was the full length of their ground floor. Back and forth. The same path, repeated. I could track it by the slight vibration it sent through the shared wall. Not enough to feel, exactly, but enough to hear. 12 steps in one direction. Pause. 12 steps back. At 7:15 in the morning. I stood at the wall and listened for 4 minutes. The rhythm never changed. Never sped up. Never slowed. 12 steps. Pause. 12 steps back. I left for bed. When I woke up at 2 p.m., it had stopped. I went back through my memory of every interaction I'd had with that house. I tried to remember if I'd ever heard 2 sets of footsteps at the same time. I couldn't remember hearing the husband at all. Ever. Not once. Christmas. Maya's school vacation. She was with me for 11 days, the longest stretch I'd had with her in months. We decorated, we baked, we watched the movies she likes that I've seen so many times I can recite them. I didn't think about the Okafors. On December 28th, Maya asked me who the lady was. I was washing dishes. I asked her what lady. She said, "The lady outside the alley window, at nighttime." My hands kept moving. I finished the dish I was washing and I set it down and I asked very carefully, "What does she look like, baby?" Maya said, "I don't know. She doesn't have her face toward us." I asked when she'd seen her. Maya said, 2 times. She's just standing there." I checked the window that night after Maya was asleep. The alley was empty. I checked the alley camera footage from my doorbell system. I'd set up a device in October, not because of the Okafors, just general security, single mother, solo household. It felt like a reasonable precaution. The camera covers the front of my house and about 15 feet of the alley. I went back through 12 days of footage. On December 22nd at 2:09 a.m., there is a figure at the far edge of the camera's reach, at the boundary of the light, standing still, facing the house. On December 26th, same position, 2:14 a.m. The footage quality drops at the boundary of the light. The figure is present in both recordings, but the resolution makes the details indeterminate. I zoomed in on both clips. The figure is tall, arms at its sides, upright posture. On December 22nd, 4 frames where the resolution briefly holds, it appears to be facing toward my house. On December 26th, the same figure, same position, it appears to be facing away. New Year's Eve. Maya was at my mother's. I was home. I'd worked the 30th and 31st. I was too tired for plans. I was asleep by 10. I woke at 2:03 a.m. Same time, same way. Like something had already finished by the time I was conscious. I did not move. I listened. The Okafor house was completely silent. The street outside was completely silent, which in Youngstown on New Year's Eve is not something I expected. No fireworks, no cars, nothing. And then the man's voice started. Not an argument, no second voice, just the man, saying something low and repetitive that I could not make out, that I could feel more than hear, the way you feel bass from a neighbor's speaker through a shared wall. I sat up in bed. It went on for 4 minutes, then it stopped, and the woman's voice started, not responding to him, not answering. The same low register, the same repetition. Different words, I thought, but the same pattern. They were not talking to each other. That's when I recognized something. Not the words. I still couldn't make out the words, but the rhythm, the spacing between syllables, the pause at the end before it started again. It was the same as the footsteps. 12 steps. Pause. 12 steps back. Whatever I'd heard moving back and forth across their ground floor at 7 a.m. 3 weeks ago. The pattern of it was the same as what was coming through the wall right now. The same count, the same interval, like language and movement were the same thing in that house. Like one was a translation of the other. I know that doesn't make sense. I'm telling you anyway. I'm a nurse. Part of my job, 9 years of it, is pattern recognition. I had assessed the Okafor house the way I assess a room. Noted the vitals, tracked the changes, told myself I understood the condition. I had been wrong about every single interpretation and correct about every single observation. That distinction matters. I don't know why I'm only naming it now. I got my phone. I opened the camera app. I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking. I walked to the window that faces the alley. The alley was not empty. A daze was standing in the alley between our houses. In winter. No coat. Facing my house. I stood at the window and she stood in the alley, and I do not know if she could see me because the light was behind me and the alley was dark. I stood there for, I counted later, 48 seconds. Then she turned and walked back to her door. She didn't look up. She didn't look at the window. She went inside. The man's voice stopped at the same moment her door closed. I couldn't think in straight lines anymore. That's the only way I can say it. I sat down on the floor of my bedroom and I stayed there until morning. I want to tell you something about Youngstown, Ohio. The city has been losing population since 1960. At its peak, 170,000 people. Today, under 60,000. What that means at street level is this. There are entire blocks where one occupied house sits between 2 or 3 vacant ones. It means that when someone moves into a house on your block, you notice. You remember. Because it doesn't happen that often. Rachel told me she'd lived next to the Okafor house for 2 years before October. 8 months of silence from the house, she said. I pulled the county property records for her address. The Okafor house has been listed as owner-occupied for 3 years, under the same name. The name on the record is not Okafor. I'm not going to tell you what the name on the record is, but I will tell you this. I searched it. The name is attached to one previous address in Mahoning County. That property was condemned in 2019. The condemnation report lists the reason as structural compromise following investigation. The investigation file is sealed. I sent Rachel a message with what I'd found. She read it. She didn't respond. That was 6 weeks ago. I'm going to tell you about the last night, January 9th, a Tuesday. I was home. Maya was at my mother's, 11:50 p.m. The Okafor house was silent. I went to bed. At 2:03 a.m., I woke up. Same time, Same way, like something had already finished by the time I was conscious. I did not move. I listened. The silence from next door was different. I know how that sounds. I'm telling you anyway. 9 years in a hospital, you learn to hear the difference between a patient who's asleep and a patient who has stopped. It's not a sound. It's the absence of a texture you didn't know you were tracking. The Okafor house had stopped. I lay still for 6 minutes. Then I heard it. Not through the wall. At the window. The alley window. My bedroom. 2nd floor. A sound I recognized. Contact. Even spaced. Moving upward. I did not breathe. The sound reached the level of my windowsill and stopped. I heard myself make a sound I didn't recognize. Then, at the glass. One knock, deliberate, slow. I looked at the window. The curtain was closed. I did not open it. I kept not opening it for a very long time. When the light came through the curtain edges in the morning, I got up. I looked at the window from across the room first. Then I walked to it. I pulled the curtain back. The alley was empty. The glass was clean. On the exterior sill, pressed into a thin layer of frost that had formed overnight, was one handprint. Fingers facing downward, like whatever left it had been hanging from the outside. 2nd floor. I put the house on the market in February. I'm staying with my mother while it sells. The Okafors are still there. Lights on at night, a car in the driveway. From what I can see, everything looks normal. I haven't spoken to Ades again. I think about calling her. I think about it in a specific way. I think about what she would say. I think she might say something that would make sense of all of it. Give me a shape for it I could hold. And then I think, she already told you something. It won't happen anymore. She said that in November, about the arguing, about the noise. The arguing did stop. What came after it wasn't noise. My house went under contract last week. Young couple, first home. They came through on a Saturday morning, stood in the kitchen, said they loved the light. I didn't tell them anything about the house next door. I told myself, I don't actually know anything. Not for certain. I can't prove any of it. That part's true. What's also true, I still have the camera footage. The 2 clips from December. The figure at the edge of the light, I've watched them probably 40 times. On December 22nd, the figure faces the house. On December 26th, the figure faces away. I keep trying to figure out when it turned around. The timestamp difference between the 2 clips is 4 days and 5 minutes. There's nothing in the footage between them. I don't know at what point it stopped looking at the house. I don't know what made it stop. I'm okay now. I think. Rachel Demi's house closed escrow on March 3rd. I checked the Mahoning County records for the property next door, the one she calls the Okafor house. No utility transfer, no change of occupancy filing, no record of any lease or sale in the past 4 years. According to the county, the house has been vacant since 2021. The new owners move in next week. I don't know if they've met the neighbors.